When I no longer know the faces of my family, yet will you know me, O Lord. When I can no longer remember my own name, yet will you remember me. This will be my enduring hope until at last I wake from my long fog into a bright morning of clarity and see you face to face, remembering again all that I had forgotten and knowing then, even as I am known. In light of this promise, give me peace even now, secure in the knowledge that what is obscured from me is not truly lost, only tucked away and waiting to be revealed fully in that eternal light.
Mm.
That is a quote from, I always forget to write his name down. I think it's Doug McKelvey, the same one that I had used earlier. And it's not the full quote, but I will post the full quote. But it's for those facing the slow loss of memory, which I know so many people are dealing with these days with their loved ones, maybe even struggling on their own, thinking that this may happen to them. So I just think it's so comforting to think about. Yes, that's happening right now to some of us, to some of those that we love, but there will come a day when all of those memories will be restored, the good ones, and we will look forward to that day. So welcome to Looking Up. This is a podcast for Christian women. My name is Carla Moore, and my friend Kathy Pollard is in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we just get together once a week, and sometimes we have a good long chat on the front end, and we have done that today. We're a little behind schedule, but it's been good to catch up, and so we just get together and talk about things that are important to Christian women and things that we find interesting and important. So that's what we're going to do today. So how are things going on in your neck of the woods, Kathy?
Going really well. Yes, we did chat for quite a while before we ever hit record.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I share that with Neil and sometimes I don't. Sometimes because I'll text him, because he knows typically not to try and call or text while we're
Mm-hmm.
recording. And I usually text him when we're done. But I have to say, well, we actually didn't start recording until, because we've
Yeah.
talked for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But that reminds me, do you remember how in the last episode we talked about correction and I
Yes,
knew
I
that
do
that was
remember
going to
that.
hit close to home because of,
Mm-hmm.
pride and all that kind of stuff. And in that episode, I said, Neil Pollard, don't listen. So he listened.
He did. He
Yeah,
disobeyed.
he had disobeyed. And he was saying something to me about it. And I said, did you not hear the part where I said, Neil Pollard, don't listen? He goes, yeah, I turned the volume up.
Turkey.
I know.
Well, I have to say that was I think one of my favorite, if something painful can be favorite, that was one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite chats that we've had because it was very helpful to me. And I've thought about it a lot of times since then, just
Mm-hmm.
in different conversations that John and I have had. John has not listened to it. In fact, I don't even know if he knows what it was about, but he probably will if he figures
Do you
out.
want me to send him the link?
You can just keep that to yourself. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I thought it was good too. It
Yeah.
was good. We
So what you been doing?
got some good feedback. Well, Neil was in Colorado
Hmm.
since the last time we talked, and so are you.
Hmm.
So I had those days to myself, and they got busier than I intended for them to be. I kind of pictured myself hunkered down in my home, taking care of some fun things, but
Yeah, never.
didn't quite turn out that way, but it was still a good few days. And I did get some projects done. I've been meaning to, I think I've mentioned on here the vegetable soup that
Hmm.
Laura Warren, not
Bart's
Warren's.
wife, Laura, not John's wife, Laura.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. She makes and cans. So I finally got to make some of that and canned it. And it's kind of a big deal because you have to pressure can it, which is more,
Never tried
in
that.
my mind, it's more trouble than just water bath canning
Hmm.
something. And you have to pressure can it for an hour and 25 minutes. So it was the good time to do it because I didn't have to worry about a schedule or getting things cleaned up
Hmm.
by the time Neil got back. So I did that. Russell Simpson had given us a whole bunch of butter beans that they already shelled and washed and everything.
Mm.
So I got those blanched and put up and frozen. I made some homemade dog treats for Ollie. I've been doing
Wow.
that instead of buying them,
Hmm.
and I needed to do that again. So I did. So there were just like little things that I've been wanting to do, but kept putting off.
Hmm.
So I was
So
able
tell
to
me more
get
about
that done.
Laura's vegetable soup. Does it have meat in it too, or is it just
No,
vegetables?
well, when she serves it, she heats it up and she adds cooked breakfast sausage,
Hmm.
ground breakfast sausage, which I never would have thought to do. But the first time we had it, she gave us a jar and we had it and we served it that way, and it was so good.
Hmm.
So I asked her how she made it, and so I actually been meaning to do it for months now, but finally got around to doing it. And I felt like I made this huge pot, of stirring this big old pot, and it only made 4 quart jars,
Oh,
which was a shame because
it
I had
just
to
cooked
pull out
down?
that big old pressure cooker, and it only had
Mm-hmm.
4 quart jars in it instead of 8, and so I was like, oh man.
Well, it made that one jar that she gave you even more precious, huh?
It did. Yeah, it did. So, but I was excited to get that done. But what have you been doing? I know you just got back.
Driving
Yeah,
and
you've been
driving and
driving,
driving and driving
spending
and
a lot
driving.
of QT with the husband in the car.
Yeah, well, he was studying some on the way up, so I listened to different podcasts. And nothing really steep and great for me. I listened to some crime drama or something. I don't even remember on the way up, but it helped keep me awake. And although to say, no, I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna tell you what put me to sleep. I put me to sleep. But we did a lot of driving. We left Wednesday night after Bible class and drove to Abilene, which was about 4 hours, and spent 8 hours in a hotel room, and then went the rest of the way, got there Thursday night, and then we came back. We left Monday night and got back Tuesday night. So we've been doing a lot of driving, but in between was fabulous. It was the
Yeah.
Bear Valley lectures, and I know Neil got to see Neil and Dale briefly.
And they loved it. They said it was
Yeah,
a great, great lectureship.
it really
Yeah.
was.
Hmm.
There was so many good things about it. Just you get to see people that you know and love. But the women's program, there were so many. I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. But we had Alicia Book out, Cherie Vestal, Katie Balance, Whitney Watson, Christy Huntsman, Lacey Kroll, Rachel Autry. I don't know if you knew that she spoke. Rachel Robertson.
I saw a picture. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we had a panel of several different members, and one that helped out, that they talked about different things. They were supposed to have like 7 minutes each. It went a little bit long, but it was all so good. There wasn't one single one that I went away going, I wish she would have talked about this. They all were just so good, and was really thankful for the different things that they brought out. The topic of the overall lectureship was igniting the church's love for preaching, which could be taken different ways,
Mhm.
for hearing preaching or for preachers. But we took that a little bit different with the women's program, and we used the word igniting, but different topics. Like one was igniting the church's love for our leaders, igniting the church's love for the word of God, different things like that. So they did such a great job, and we really enjoyed being, usually during the women's part, I'm downstairs the whole time and don't get to hear some of the men's, but they are recorded and I'll get to listen to them later. But
Mhm.
we really enjoyed it. It was really very uplifting. We had a banquet for Denny Petrillo. He's not retiring, so I don't know what to call it. It was a non-retirement banquet, but he stepped down as the president, and now
Mhm.
Wayne Jones is the president, but Denny's still going to be teaching. He's just moved down the hall, as they said. But we celebrated Denny on Friday night, and that was fun. I mean, it was a packed house. That room that we usually have the graduation banquet, same place
Mhm.
we had, and it was crowded, and they had a video of different people that sent, how they love and appreciate Denny, and it was just a good thing to celebrate him. He's a good man. He's done a really great work there with Bear Valley. So that's what we've been
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Well, good. And I have some random things to share.
Okay, random.
Some These are just little things that plopped into my lap this week, and I thought it'd be fun to share them. And one was somebody gave me this puzzle scoop. Have you ever seen a puzzle
It
scoop?
looks like a magnifying glass. No,
It
I've
is
never heard of
that.
a puzzle scoop.
It's that also. It's like a really skinny, clear spatula. So if you're putting together, because we've been talking about jigsaw puzzles, and if you're
Hmm.
putting together a section of your jigsaw puzzle and you need to move it, you slip this under that so it doesn't
Oh,
break
cool.
apart.
Okay.
But it also, look at that,
Helps you
lights
see.
up,
Uh-huh.
and it's a magnifying glass. So if it's a tiny piece and it's got little details on it, you can look at it. Anyway, this
That
is
sounds
great.
like an old person's tool.
I've already, I was just about to say, I've already used it multiple times.
Hmm.
Stacy Warren gave me this, and
That's
then
sweet.
it was very sweet. And then Heather Pascal, who is recovering from surgery this week,
Hmm.
look at this. You see that
The
title?
story of
I don't know.
archaeology, illustrated
Yeah,
history of 50 great discoveries. Cool.
Yeah, it's a hardback, beautiful book on archaeology, and it was just in my box. And she stuck a post-it note on it, said "Saw this and thought of you," and it's really good. It's got great illustrations, great information, and so anyway, I thought I feel known. A puzzle thing, an archaeology thing, and then
You could take that puzzle scoop on an archaeological dig and use the magnifying glass to dig
there you
and the
go.
point of that and dig things out.
All right, let's see how we can make this one fit in. Dale and Janelle returned some jars that they had of ours that they had milk in it, and she tucked this down into the bag. Do those look familiar to you?
They look may remind me of our stickers and our
Yes. So
logo.
for
Yeah.
those who aren't watching, these are magnets in the shape of arrows, and the
Look at that.
color and the shape of them
Hmm.
look exactly like our logo for
That's
looking up.
cool.
Is that not the coolest thing?
Yeah.
And then the last thing is a mystery gift. I don't even know where this came from. This cute little fabric pouch uh, was in my box last night at church, and there's no note or anything with it. But inside, look at this adorable little.
It's a little
It's a
chickie.
it's a little baby chick on some kind of. I don't even know what this is. It looks like a. It looks almost like a pendant. Like you could
Yeah.
put it on a
Uh-huh.
chain. It's got kind of a bronze
It's
casing
really
around it,
cute.
but it's adorable. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know who it's from or why, but anyway, there's like these little just random
You've been
things.
showered with gifts this week.
I know. I was like, what is it, my birthday or something? It's not, but
Yeah. Well,
so
good
that
for
was
you.
fun.
That's
Yeah.
always fun to have little neat things
Yeah.
that
And I'm
land in
not
your
I debated sharing it because I'm not trying to say, look, people think I'm special. I feel that way,
you are
but
special.
I'm really wanting to get a shout out to the thoughtfulness of these individuals. We've mentioned, except for the mystery person, these names on here before, and they listen. So
Maybe the mystery will be
very
solved. Or
thoughtful. Yeah.
maybe whoever put that in your box meant to put it in somebody else's box, and
Yeah.
they're whoever meant to is supposed to get it is going, I thought you said you were going to put a chicken in my box. And
Awkward.
so now they're going to come take it back from you.
Too bad, so sad. It's mine now.
Not sure what you're going to do with it, but
That's right.
yeah.
Oh, I forgot one because I didn't bring it over here. Amanda Campbell makes she crochets little pumpkin garlands
Hmm.
and sells them this time of year. And so she sent me one, and I've already got it up on my mantle. It's adorable. But if you're interested, you can go to her page. I guess I could share some information and order one. They're very reasonable, but
Like
it's just,
Etsy or
I mean, I don't know if she has it on Etsy or not, but on Facebook for sure. She's shared it on there, and you can go. I'll see if I
hmm,
can find some more direct
yeah,
information if somebody wants to order them. But it's just these cute little orange, like a burnt orange color pumpkin on a garland
made
that
out
you
of
can
what?
hang on your yarn. They're
Okay,
crocheted. They're adorable.
that's
But you
cute.
can hang it on your mantle, or I debated between there and like across my kitchen window, right over
Hmm.
the sink. Would have been
Hmm.
cute also, but I ended up going with the mantle. But
I have some
um,
fall decorations, but I haven't taken any of them out.
I haven't
Is it
either,
fall
but
yet? It
it
is officially
is.
fall.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 days ago it became fall.
Well, I cleaned up my office. I think I sent you a picture. I can't remember of it all nice, neatly organized. And then part of what we were doing up in Denver was bringing back a trailer load of our stuff
Hmm.
that we didn't have room to bring back in March. So we brought it all back and it's all right here.
I was gonna ask where you put it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Because like I said before, this is my very carefully scripted,
That's right. The clean space.
this is the only clean space in this office. And just it's chaos right on the other side of the borders of my desk. But
So you cleared it all out just in time to fill it back up again.
yeah, yeah. But Mike is building some bookshelves for us. I'm going to have a whole wall of bookshelves over here, which is going to be very helpful because most of what I
Hmm.
brought back was books
Hmm.
and binders and things like that. And John's got plenty of space for his, but I have no bookshelves for mine.
Hmm.
So, in fact, my office, but the whole closet back there is his books. So I guess he does have more books than I do. I'm not bitter at all, but I just need some bookshelves of my own. So Mike is
The
gonna at some
phrase,
point. Yeah,
that phrase, I feel like you and I are saying that more and more. Like, we'll
I'm not bitter at all.
we'll share something, and I never know. Are you being serious or sarcastic? It can go either way.
I think
I'm
I'm,
not bitter at all.
I don't think I'm bitter. I'm a little bit like, can I have one
Yeah.
or two of those shelves, please,
Yes.
to
In
put
my
more books
office,
on?
in my
Yeah.
own office.
Hmm. Yeah, well, he
Get
did
that
let
junk out of
me.
my face.
I did as we were bringing things in from the trailer, like, that's yours. It goes back there. That's your, I don't need
That's
that in
right.
here. Already got 4 or 5 more tubs to unpack. So
Poor
anyway.
Neil is in a no-win situation because sometimes the kinds of souvenirs that he likes to bring home from his travels aren't really ones that I want in the house, you know?
Hmm.
And I keep
Like,
saying to him, well, he always wants like a picture of the region
hmm
itself, like a wall hanging of some
hmm
sort
okay.
and all kinds of little knick-knacky kind of things or whatever. And I'll say, oh, yeah, that'll be great in your office,
hmm
you know?
Yeah.
So now his office is covered with all of these things from all of his travels. But I keep saying to him, you need to clear out your office. You need to
hmm
declutter. How can you even think it, but I'm sure he's like, you
It's
can't have
not
it
your
both
office.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I'm gonna go back and edit that part out because
Well,
but I
John,
say to him, yeah, that'll be great in your office. And then I'm like, your office has got too much stuff in it.
yeah, yeah. But you can find a place in your office for it, not in the house. John is almost the opposite. He, before the house was redone, which we had to do in 2021, um, because of the whole septic issue, which we've talked about before, I won't bring it up. But I had to take everything down off the walls, everything out of all of the closets. I mean,
Yeah.
I everything in my house I touched during
Mm,
that 6 month period, and we got rid of a bunch of things. And in the process, a lot of pictures came down off the wall, a lot of decorations came down, and he didn't want me to put them back up. He really liked what he called this clean.
mm-hmm,
He didn't use the word aesthetic, but that's what it was. He didn't,
mm-hmm,
I think he just functions better when there's not a lot of things on the wall.
mm-hmm,
But so in here, I'm doing what I want because it's my space. But in there, there's really not a whole lot. And I kind of, I kind of like it too for it to
mm-hmm,
be non-cluttered. But there's a lot of mementos and things over the years that
mm-hmm.
I want to remember. So I have to figure out, maybe just pick one thing from that era or whatever. Because you can't have all the baby pictures of your kids on the wall anymore when you have grandkids now and there's pictures everywhere. So just
Yeah,
have to
we
choose.
kind of rotate a little bit, but it's more out of necessity that we brought a lot of things that were on our walls from Colorado after
Hmm.
purging. But this house is mostly windows.
Yeah,
You wall space is like prime
at a
real estate
premium.
because there's
Hmm.
not a lot of it. And so I can't put everything up, but I still have a lot of it stored. And every now and then I'll go in there and I'll go, oh, I'll put this one up now for a while, and just maybe switch it out a little bit here and
Hmm.
there. And I see things all the time that I think, oh, I love that. I'm gonna get that. And then I have to go, I don't have any place to put that. So
Hmm.
no,
Yeah,
not gonna
I
get that.
I feel that. Yeah, no room for it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I've mentioned before, I'm trying to do, if I bring something in, I've got to take something out,
Mm-hmm.
which doesn't always happen, but I really have tried to do some of that, which helps, if there's something
Mm-hmm.
that you really like, and I find things like that at Goodwill, I have to get rid of something before I can bring that in. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so
All right.
I I'm gonna bring this up. I told you I wasn't sure about it, but I'm gonna just bring it up because it's one of those things that, why can't we talk about things? Why are we nervous about bringing things up that might be people have opinions about? So
That's why we're nervous.
before I keep going and make things worse, which they may not be bad at all. So my doctor put me or wrote me a prescription for, it's not Ozempic, but it's the compounded. So it's not the one that you get for diabetes, but it's the same thing. It's just made, it's like a recipe. And we've had this conversation about the benefits and the risks and those kind of things, which I think is what makes me nervous about talking about it, because people have opinions about, do the benefits outweigh the risks, or maybe some people think you shouldn't take that when diabetics are having a hard time getting it, which this is different because it's a compounded, it's not the Ozempic that you get a prescription for. Um, but she recommended it for me because I'm not pre-diabetic. I don't have issues with that. But there are just so many things that are complicated when you carry extra weight. She calls it adipose tissue, which I think sounds, I'm not sure how I feel about Adipose tissue or fat? Which
What does
one is
that
worse?
mean? What does
Ad-
adipose mean?
it's fat.
Is it really?
Yeah. Adipose tissue is just extra weight. So when
Okay.
she's talking about extra adipose tissue, I think that's better than saying you're too fat, which is just bluntly said. So anyway, I I'm trying it, and it's a shot that I have to give myself, which I
Ugh.
managed. The first one my friend Tammy helped me with because she's got more experience with that kind of thing. And so the second
Mm,
one well, the first one, I mean, I told you I've had the flu shot, and it's like these needles, they've done something that made them so much you don't even feel it. I mean,
right.
literally, like you feel a touch, but there's no sting, there's no prick
Prick.
like you used to
Hmm.
feel. Of course, I'm sure different shots that have different substances might feel differently. So I'm sure not all shots are like that, but I did manage to give myself my own shot the other day. Just I'm
That is
sitting
so
there going,
cringy. My jaw feels weird right now. Just thinking about that. Just,
well, I'm sitting
ugh.
there because it was in your thigh, and I cleaned it off. I'm
Ah!
like, okay, do it, Carla. Just do
Blah,
it.
blah, blah, blah.
Do it. You got to do it. You can do it. You can do it.
Ugh.
You hurt yourself every day in little ways that hurt way worse than one little poke, you know? And that's what
Mm,
I keep telling myself, when you're not expecting it, you're like, ouch, and then you just go on. But when it's something that you're purposely
yeah.
doing to yourself, it's just different. But it,
And
it wasn't bad at all.
you can't look away. And I know you and
Right.
I both, usually if we're having
Well,
blood drawn or
yeah,
something, we're like, just do it. I'm not looking.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, you can't go like, okay, oops, missed. It didn't go at the right angle, when I've never done anything like that before. And so the first one, they give it to you in a syringe, and then you have to put the needle on. Of course, the needle's covered and all. So you pull this little stopper out, then you take the little needle part and push it in. And I'm holding the syringe like this and unconsciously with the plunger on my thumb. So I realize, oh, I'm squeezing, I'm making the medicine come out before the needle's even on. So obviously
Oh,
things that I'm on a learning curve.
yeah.
So here we are talking about needles more than we were talking about the medicine. I'm thinking that I don't really, I'm not asking for opinions about it, I guess. Although I'm willing to talk about it, I think it's just a little polarizing because there's people who feel strongly one way and strongly the other way. And I am sort of in the middle right now. I feel like if it helps me, and what I understand it to do is that you feel full, so you don't eat as much, so you can eat, and it's not withholding nutrients, things like that. So you eat a
Mhm.
healthy diet, you just don't eat as much. And it also turns off those food noises, is what they say, like where you're just walking around the house going, I really want a snack. I want a snack. I need something to eat. What can I eat? And the first week I didn't feel all that different. This is the second week. So I'm just on my second week. And I have felt a little bit like I'm not hungry. I just don't think I really want. I don't feel bad. I don't feel nauseous. I don't feel like food's gross. I just don't need anything. And I really do appreciate that. I like that.
Hmm.
Um,
So you
we
have to
went
give yourself a shot once a week.
once a week, yeah.
Once a
And you
week.
have to
And
keep it frozen too.
does it does it come like a bunch all at once or it's just delivered once a week or how does that work?
I got four, and you keep it in the
Okay.
freezer. So it's a monthly, 4 times a month
Mhm.
prescription. I did notice we went to Lucille's this week while we were in Denver,
Mhm.
and I ordered the Eggs Benedict, which I've had it before and it's really good. And so it's on the English muffin, then it has the cheese of some sort, and then it has the meat, which is Canadian bacon, and then they put the over easy egg on top. And to me, over easy means that your yolk is easy, but the white is firm.
Right.
And so it's two of them, you have two, both sides of the English muffin. I ate one of them, and then I set in on the second one. And when I cut into the egg, some of the white fell out, like just kind of rolled out, and it wasn't done.
Gross. Gross.
And that was it. I was like, no, thanks. I'm done. And I need more of that, because I think what I'm hoping what this helps me do is just say, okay, I've had enough. I've had half of what I normally eat, and that's enough. Because there's things like if you have a bowl of macaroni and cheese,
Mhm.
I'll keep going on that because I like comfort food, and
Mhm.
I need to have a little bit. And I think self-control, and I'm pretty sure I do have some, not all the time, but
Mhm.
I did intermittent fasting for a long time, and you have to have some self-control to be able to do that, just to stop eating. But I felt like that just kind of quit working for me because it was my body figured out what I was doing, and it would say, okay, we're going to hang on to these calories just in case you need them later and hold on to this extra adipose tissue. You're welcome. We're not going to let anything happen to your extra adipose tissue. We're going to hang on. So thanks to my body for doing that.
Mhm.
So there it
Well,
is.
I'm glad you shared it. Be thinking about you and praying that it's successful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And if anyone has any questions or concerns for Carla, please feel free. She wants to hear your comments.
I don't mind questions, but and I don't even mind if people want to say like, okay, this is and I talked to Shannon, she's a um, pharmacist, and I asked what she thought about it, and she has, she's not really studied usually what she does because she's in a hospital, and so she's looking at things that are affecting you right now, not long term so much, but there's people that I can talk to, and I trust my doctor about this, and so we'll see. And I asked her, is this something that I'd have to be on the rest of my life? And she said the studies have not really shown, they don't know long term if it's just something that kind of gives you a head start, and that your stomach will shrink if you don't eat as much and you don't want as much, whatever. But we'll see. I just don't know.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna try it and see.
Oh, good. I'm glad you shared that. I think a lot of women are probably curious.
Yeah, I
some may be
was.
on it and some may have thought about it or heard about it and they want to know more about it. So I'm
Hmm.
sure that a lot of women will find this very interesting.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. We'll see.
All right.
Do you have anything else you want to share? Because I just realized I'm driving today.
You're driving.
All right. So our topic today, I don't even know what to call it. In my little notes that I wrote to myself, I put go to verses, but I don't think that really has quite a ring to it, but we'll figure out what to call it later.
Mm-hmm.
I just was thinking that it would be interesting to have a discussion between the two of us and later next week when this comes out to find out what other people think about this. What are some passages that you go to when you need comfort, when you want to rejoice about something, just different passages and things that are challenging to you, things that were surprising to you as you studied and were in the Word. And I've learned a lot from you in your classes over the years. And so I'm interested in hearing what you pick for your passages. But that's just what we're going to do today. It's really simple. We're going to talk about passages that were eye-opening or surprising to us when we first studied them, or maybe like a wow, oh, this is so cool. And there's a lot of them. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you felt this too, but when I sent you this topic a few days ago, I thought, oh, that'll be a cinch because I already had two or three in mind. But then as I'm thinking about it, well, what about that? Or what if I
Mm-hmm.
forget something that I've studied and I'd forget to mention that? So it was a little more challenging than I thought it would be. So we're just going to have discussion about different things that we have come across in the Word that have been helpful to us, that have been encouraging or comforting.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just get started. And the first one that we're going to talk about is a passage that when you studied it, and this is the one you have for number one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was eye-opening or surprising or made you say wow. So I'm going to toss it
Mm-hmm.
to you and let you start with that one.
Yeah. And first, let me say, I loved this idea when you shared it. And I reacted the same way you did. This will be great. This will be fun. But then also reacted the same way you
Yeah.
did when you started thinking
Yeah.
about it. And
Whoa.
there were so many of them. I was like, oh, but what about this one? And what about it's kind of like when somebody asks you what your favorite food is.
Hmm.
You feel like you have to, there's a lot of pressure there and you have to be really careful, almost as
Hmm.
if I'm saying, well, if this is my favorite food, that gets rid of all the other ones. But that's not the
Yeah.
case, right?
You need different categories. My favorite
Yeah.
dessert. Well, in the desserts, a category of chocolate. Yeah.
That's right, exactly. All right, so eye-opening, surprising, or wow passage
Hmm.
is how you put it. And I thought about this one for a while, and I think my hesitation came with trying to come up with something that I could express succinctly without
Yeah.
getting bogged down. But I'm just going to use this one anyway. And it was really when studying the Gospel of Matthew with Denny Petrillo several years ago when we first moved to Denver. I sat in on his Matthew class.
Hmm.
And I've probably shared this on here before, but that was just one of those classes that I thought would be really easy
Hmm.
because I mean, who doesn't understand the Gospel of Matthew? I grew up in the church, it's like
Yeah.
all this stuff going through my mind. And right out of the gate, he brought up things that I'd never heard before. And I'm not saying that it was one of those things where I just never heard it before. He really taught us how to look in context. And so the surprising, eye-opening thing for me was a couple of examples. There were actually multiple, but I'll just share two.
Okay.
One of them was in the model prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done,
Hmm.
and I had always understood that to mean the church.
Hmm.
And so we didn't need to pray that part anymore because the
The
kingdom had
church had
already
already.
come.
Hmm.
Yeah. But in context and understanding what that word means, it means the will and reign of God,
Hmm.
and kingdom is used a lot of different ways in the Bible. And so that was one of the first things. And I just remember my initial reaction was like, say what?
Yeah. What you saying with us?
But then exactly, I went back and kind of looked at how kingdom was used in the gospel.
Hmm.
And then another one, where two or three are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. And again, always heard all my life that had to do with like worship. When we worship, Jesus is with us because we're gathered together. But in context, it's talking about church discipline. It's not talking about worship. And so it was the reason I wanted to include that one is because for me, it was really more about learning to study for yourself, keep scripture in context,
Context. Hmm.
because it's so easy. I mean, there's a lot of examples. It's so easy just to pull things out willy nilly and then make it not that what we might say about it is wrong, it could still be a truth
Hmm.
or something encouraging for us, or
Hmm.
comforting for us, but learning to keep things in context. So I included it as an eye opening and wow passage because it was exciting and also discouraging at the same time
Hmm.
when this first happened because it made me think, how much have I just kind of made assumptions about or, not really studied for myself?
Hmm.
And so I asked Neil this question though. And I said that this was your first one that you wanted to talk about. And his mind went in a completely different direction. And it was one of those things where I was like, well, now I kind of wish I'd done that because his mind went straight to Isaiah 6. And I saw also the Lord high and lifted up. And it's the whole beautiful, awe inspiring vision, the throne room, the seraphim,
Hmm.
the huge wings, the whole, I
Yeah.
mean, like he's like just talking about it. And then he said the same with Revelation 21, this awe-inspiring, the mighty chorus, the sounds, the sights, it's all
Hmm.
like you can't help
So
but
he had the
be,
visual.
yeah, you can't help but
Hmm.
be wowed when you read these passages. So then I was like, well, I'm gonna share that one too, because I think I like that one better, but it's Neil's.
Well, it is interesting. It's just a different looking at it in a different way, which when I was making this list, we were driving and I was on the way, like, okay, how do I put this? Because um I didn't mean necessarily as far as eye-opening, like, oh, I would have been wrong about that all these years, but just
Mhm.
kind of like what you're saying, there are things that maybe we just haven't paid enough attention to or looked at in context. I know I did that so many times. Just
Mhm.
you think you know the Bible because you can memorize a verse or a section of scripture, but if it's pulled out of context, it's it's not helpful.
Mhm.
Like you said, there's truth in these things, but we just context is something that I think we just overlook way too often
Mhm.
and are tempted to proof text with things. And when you really look at it, you've been looking at it wrong.
Mhm.
And it's hard to know how to handle that because you don't want to just come out to someone and say, well, you're just looking at that wrong because you've taken it out of context. But you also want people to look at things in context. And so it's just a
Mhm.
struggle.
Well, but just teaching how to study and
Hmm.
learning, it's one of those things like last week we talked about correction being important because we're blind to our own shortcomings sometimes. Sometimes there are
Mhm.
things that we're the last ones to see it, and we
Yeah.
need somebody to point that out. And in some ways, it can be the same with our Bible study when we think we're approaching it honestly, but we've got baggage or we've got things that we've always heard or believed that we're automatically inserting into the text without realizing it.
Mhm.
And so I think that's why it was so eye opening for me. It was like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
But I really love that you brought this up and kind of feel like in my own personal Bible study, I want to camp out on it because I also thought, and I don't know what direction you're going to go, but that would be a fun one for the text that you study, that you see some little beautiful detail that you've never seen
Nugget.
before that
Mhm.
just gives you chills, some
Mhm.
gesture that Jesus did or, said, or, there's a lot of those kinds of things too. So I wasn't
Right.
even quite sure exactly what you were looking for, but either way, in
Mhm.
any case, it was fun to think about.
Yeah. And when you just said that, it made me think of, this is not mine, but the passage it talks about, yeah, because I'm not giving up mine, where Jesus turned and looked at Peter
Yes.
after he betrayed him. And so for all of my life, really, until the last maybe 5 or 10 years, I thought about that as Jesus turning and look at Peter like, look what I told you this would happen. And you did it, with these
Mhm.
accusing eyes. But when you go back and read the context of the things that led up to that, and knowing that Jesus, the night before, I want to say it was the night before, he had told Peter that the devil is looking to sift you like wheat.
All right, you're
But
stepping on
when,
one of mine from later.
okay, well,
Go
okay,
ahead
then I'll
though.
just,
No, go ahead.
well, when he says, but when you turn,
Mhm.
when you, I can't remember exactly how he says it, but he tells Peter basically, you're going to turn around
Mhm.
and then you're going to strengthen your brothers. So that, just thinking about Jesus in a different light, that he wouldn't have turned and looked at Peter with reproach or with accusation, but with love and remember what I said.
You're going
Remember
to
how
turn
I
this
told
around.
you. Yeah,
Mhm.
you're going to be okay. And don't, keep your trust and faith in me. So hopefully I didn't just walk all over what you were going to talk about here.
Yeah, you
I
pretty
did.
much did. Now, between now and then, I'll have to scramble around to find another one.
No, don't you talk about it because you'll do it better than I did because
Uh,
that just made me.
so, what's yours then?
Also, and what you said about kingdom after
Yeah,
that class, now every time I come across the word kingdom, I have to look and see which
yeah.
translation and what's the word, the Greek
Mhm.
word behind that. Is it so we don't have any excuse to not dig into those tools because we
Mhm.
all have them.
Mhm.
They're online. You can look at a Greek dictionary
Yeah.
online easily and find out what it is. So,
It could be church, it could be heaven, or it could be
hmm
the reign and will of God.
hmm yeah.
Is
And so,
that is
what
that
does
all
that
of
mean?
them, or is there another one? But I
I
know
don't
there's at
remember.
least those three. It's
Hmm
used in those three different ways for sure.
Yeah, yeah, good one.
Mhm.
Okay, mine is a section, and I think more. It was a kind of a wow moment for me when several years ago we were standing on the Mount, what is it called on Nazareth, the precipice, Mount Precipice.
Mhm.
And so you can stand up there and you can look out over the Jezreel Valley. You can see Mount Tabor, you can see Mount Murray, you can see all, I mean, you can see so far. But John was pointing out the hill or Mount Murray, the hill of Murray, and real close on either side of that little mountain is a little community that used to be, probably still is, called Nain or Nain. I'm not sure how it's said in the Hebrew. And then there is another community where the Shunammite woman, Shunem, let me make sure that I've got those, not mixing them up. But yeah, Nain and Shunem are both at the foot of Mount Murray down at the Jezreel Valley. And John was pointing out the things that happened there. And one of them, the widow of Nain, and that's where Jesus was walking through with his disciples, and he came across this funeral procession. And there was a widow, a woman who had lost her husband already, and she was weeping and following the bier, the funeral procession, with her son, her only son, who was dead. And we don't know how old he was. But so this account, John was talking about how Jesus stopped and he raised the son back to life. But the phrase that really hung in my mind that day was that it says that Jesus gave him back to his mother. And it was, I don't, you know how sometimes you just go, wow, you just think, what did that feel like for this mother whose son had died and Jesus came along and raised him back to life? And how did he do it? Did he say, did he just take her by the hand and lead her over? And can you imagine her shock and her joy and her tears and disbelief as like her life? He had to have been her life was given back to her. And Jesus gave him back to his mother. So that happened in Nain, however you say it. But then, so that is in First Kings 17. No, that's in Luke. That's in Luke. In Second Kings chapter 4, there's the Shunammite woman and Elisha. She was a woman of means, and she and her husband built this room for Elisha. I always get Elisha and Elijah, but I wrote it down, Elisha. She built him a little room so that when he's traveling back and forth, he could stop there and rest, and he would have a place of privacy and rest. And he asked her, "What can I do for you?" And she told him that she didn't have a son. So he prayed to God. God gave her a son. And it says when he was grown, but I don't know how grown it was. He was in the field one day and he said, my head, and he died. But it says that they brought him to his mother and he laid on her lap and died. And there's that phrase, to his mother. So here you have the widow of Nain, who Jesus gave him back to his mother. Then you have this Shunammite woman where they said, take him to his mother. And then there's the story of how Elisha raised him back and gave him back to his mother, basically. And then there's one other account of a mother, and that is in 1 Kings 17, the widow of Zarephath. And that's up on the northern Mediterranean coast. So it's not in this area, but it's another mother. She's the one who Elijah asked her to make him a little cake. And she said, well, all I have is a little flour and a little oil. I'm going to make a little cake, and my son and I are going to eat it, and we're going to die because there was a famine in the land. There was a drought. So Elijah, to double check myself constantly, basically says, make me one first. To me, it's like an issue of trust. Make me one first. And so she did. And then he promised her that her jar of oil would not go empty, that she would have enough as long as the drought lasted. So this boy also died. And the passage talks about how Elijah, it was kind of odd, stretched himself out on this boy, but he brought him back to life. And this also says that Elijah took the child, brought him down from the upper room, and gave him to his mother. So those three mothers, it just made me think about all of the mothers who have lost children and where we are today. And, we don't experience miracles like they did in Bible times, but how many mothers are out there who have lost children, whether through miscarriage or a child, just a nightmare situation where you've lost a child, and how you would pray this prayer. God, if there's any way, let this happen to me, bring my child back to me. And you see mothers and fathers too, but just these three talking about to his mother, how that isn't going to happen in this situation in the same way that it did in Bible times, but they're not going to come back to us, but we can go to them. And I think in that situation, Jesus will give them back to their mothers. And I just think that there was just something about that phrase, Jesus gave him back to his mother, that just resonated with me. And I think some of it was people that I was close to were going through infertility and had experienced miscarriages and were just suffering and grieving. And these three mothers who had their children returned to them, I thought, that's going to happen. It's going to be different. But these children, these innocent children, that God created in the womb and knit together in the womb. And there's a soul attached to those babies that have been miscarried. And there will come a day, if we do what God wants us to do, that we will be reunited with those children and God will give those children back to us. And I don't know what that will look like. I don't know how it will be. I don't have any details about that, um, it's just, it was one of those, wow, that is so cool that Jesus gave him back to his mother.
That's beautiful. I can't help but think about when Jesus was on the cross and his own mother
Mhm.
was right down there and at the foot of it and witnessing it all. And he knew he was going to come back and be resurrected. Did she believe that already, or was she just, I mean,
Grieving.
obviously she would
Mhm.
have been in anguish on the treatment he was receiving, but
Yeah,
was she being held up by her faith and all those things that she had pondered in her heart, or was she just totally grieving?
yeah. I don't know. It is amazing to think about what he was going through, and yet he was thinking about her. There was
Mm-hmm.
something else in in this study that what we're going to talk about comforting passages later, and I thought about this one, but it's tied to this when I think about mothers and fathers that I know have lost their children, and just to think about them going on a journey that you can't be with them. Like what happens? Where do they go? And how, when you have a young child, it's just my throat closes up and I don't know how to describe the feeling of you can't let them go anywhere without you. They are completely dependent on you, and yet they're going on this journey without you. But there's a passage, and this was shared with me by my friend Michelle Nickel, who's had numerous miscarriages, that Luke 16:22 says that there's that it's the rich man and Lazarus, and they both die. And it says that Lazarus was carried away by the angels to Abraham's bosom. So the thought of being carried away by angels, that that gives me chills and tears too, to think about. At death, a faithful Christian is carried away by angels to Abraham's bosom. Don't know what that means exactly. Don't know what it looks like, but
Mm-hmm.
the thought of they're not alone, for that
Mm-hmm.
child, they're not alone. So that's my wow. And
Mm-hmm.
we're probably already going too slow. So
That's really good. That's
yeah,
beautiful.
I liked that one. Okay, the
Mm-hmm.
second one is a passage that brings you a lot of comfort.
Mm-hmm. This one was really tough. I did a whole Bible marking one time on just comforting scriptures because
Hmm.
there's so many, and what a blessing that is that God's word, with everything else that it does, gives plenty of comfort. So I chose two, one from the Old Testament, one from the New Testament, but I won't camp out very long on either one. But the first one is Psalm 121. And it's a really short psalm. It's what, 6 or 7 verses, but I feel like it encompasses so much, and it hits that place when you're in a situation that arises, catches you out of nowhere, knocks you off your feet, or just something that you've been carrying for a long time. It applies. And the psalmist says, I lift my eyes into the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. But then it goes on to say, how he's with us and keeping us from stumbling and keeping us safe and secure and being with our going out and our coming in from this time forth and forevermore. And it's just that reminder of no matter what it is, God's in his heaven. He sees you, he's with you, he will always be with you. You can rest at night, and
Hmm.
even if it's not this physical night, you will rest.
Hmm.
And I love Psalm 121. The New Testament one is John 10, 14 and 15, because that's the one where Jesus talks about him being the shepherd, and
Hmm.
he knows his sheep
Hmm.
and they know his voice. And I love the visual image of it. I love the tenderness, the care, the personal relationship, that reminder that this isn't some distant relationship that we have. I know you, I see you, I know your name, I'm going to take care of you. And you kind of brought up, I think it was in a recent episode, that book about the shepherds look at Psalm 23,
Hmm.
which is beautiful. And then you bring all that into what Jesus is saying when he says he's our shepherd and he knows his sheep.
Yeah.
So those are my two.
To be known by him. Think sometimes about how people want to be known by, or like if some celebrity or some famous person knows them, and they
Mm-hmm.
get to talk to them. They think that's pretty cool. But I think God knows me. The
Mm-hmm.
creator of the universe, of those mountains, of this, whatever, knows everything about me and wants, even more than that, wants to know me,
Mm-hmm.
wants to have a relationship with me. Somebody said this weekend, that's the story of the Bible is God wants a relationship with you. Okay, mine is a little different. It's First Peter 2, verses 19 through 24, and it's a different kind of comfort. And I think this is more of a when people treat you unjustly, it's something that, or treat someone that you love unjustly. I look at this, and this is, there have been times in my life that people that I love have been attacked or spoken wrongly about. Their character's been assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
And I always look at this. I think it says, talking about Jesus, this finds favor if for the sake of conscience toward God, a person bears up under sorrows when suffering unjustly. For what credit is there if, when you sin and are harshly treated, you endure it with patience? But when you do what is right and suffer for it, you patiently endure it, for this finds favor with God. And this is the part. You have been called for this purpose, since Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example for you to follow in his steps, who committed no sin, nor was any deceit found in his mouth. And while being reviled, he did not revile in return. While suffering, he uttered no threats. And I love this part, but kept entrusting himself to him who judges justly. And those words, there's the implication that others don't judge justly. And we know that. You and I both know that on a personal level. And you've seen it. We've all seen it on a world stage, in the church, in our families, in friendships, relationships, even in marriage. Sometimes we are judged unjustly or unrighteously. Other translations say, entrusting himself to him who judges righteously. But I love the justly because it gives me that there's just and there's unjust.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, with that implication that others do judge unjustly, but God will always do what is right. And God always knows all of the details. And we can't always know all of the details. When someone um, attacks our character or when someone says something about someone we love that we know, I don't know what it is, but that just makes me so angry when
Yeah.
people harshly criticize and they don't know what they're talking about. You
Mm-hmm.
don't know what you're talking about. And I just want to say, you don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we do know that God knows what he's talking about and that he always is going to judge justly. So if we're going to be like Jesus in this sense, we are, that word entrusting, it's just to hand it over. It means to deliver ourselves or to hand over. So, okay, you can say what you will, you can do what you want. And I think you and I both talked about how he's like, whatever. And John can be like that sometimes too. And I'm like, but, but But in this situation, Jesus handed himself over to God. We can too just say, okay, Lord, I know that you are the just judge, and I'm going to put this in your hands, and I'm not going to worry about what people say and think because I know that you know what's going on. And that brings
Mm-hmm.
me a lot of comfort.
I was just thinking too how comforting that has to be for church leaders who, elders in the Lord's church have to make difficult decisions, do courageous actions, and sometimes it's not received well,
Mhm.
by certain people who
Yeah.
might, like you were saying, assassinate their character or make
Hmm.
accusations or hurl insults or, just really mishandle
Hmm.
the situation. And usually those in leadership, they know way more about the
Right.
situation that
But they
they
can't
can't
say.
share. They cannot. And so they just have to take the high road and take all of that. And it always just hurts my heart because, you just kind of want to go, we have to trust them. God put them in this position and we have to trust them. But they're not interested in defending themselves. They're
Right.
just interested in doing God's will. And
Hmm.
a passage like that, just reminding them, keep doing what you're supposed to be doing, keep following God's word,
Hmm.
keep shepherding the flock because he sees everything. And,
Hmm.
not everybody can or will, but that's okay
Yeah. He's a
because
good
in
God
the
and
end,
he'll
he's a good God. That's
he'll
right.
do the right thing. And
Yeah.
we don't, but he will. Okay. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Number three, a passage that is convicting.
I chose Second Corinthians 6, 1 through 13, because this is one of my favorite sections about Paul, who was put in a position where he had to defend himself. And I think about somebody who spent their, especially since his conversion, obviously, spent his life in service and travel and serving God, loving his people, and his character was attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And he was put in a position of having to defend himself. But in this whole book, really, but especially this section, he really talks about the fact that he's going to love and serve no matter what. And the convicting part of that to me is the reason why, and the motivation that he gives for it is their joy. So even though he had been working with or alongside people that disappointed him, hurt him, discouraged him, misunderstood him, you name it, even though he experienced all kinds of uncomfortable situations,
Mm-hmm.
he was motivated. He didn't even say, I mean, he probably did somewhere else that, I'm doing this because I love God first. It was still their joy that motivated him,
Mm-hmm.
even after all of that. And I find that hugely
Yeah,
convicting
me too.
because it's way easier for me to say, I didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve that. Forget about it. I'm just going to do something else. I'm just going to go somewhere else. I'm just, whatever it might be, get my feathers ruffled. But he told them, I love you. Make room for me in your heart. Your joy is my motivation. I do everything because of you, and think about a relationship in marriage, a relationship with your brothers or sisters in Christ, a relationship with your neighbors or the lost. If that's our motivation, how that changes everything and
Mm-hmm.
how we respond to situations that don't go down the way we thought they would.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one's a tough one to swallow. I see myself in
Yeah.
that, especially when you think about the church in Corinth, and that
Mm-hmm.
was, you said, in Second Corinthians, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
second letter
Mm-hmm.
that he had written, and there was struggles and trials and trouble, and he was having to fuss at them, and but yet he was still interested in their joy. That's a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
Mine also comes from Paul, and it's in Philippians 1. You actually brought this up a couple, I don't remember which podcast it was, but Philippians 1, 14 through 18. And he's talking about his imprisonment in the cause of Christ was well known. Most people trusting in the Lord have far more courage to speak, but he says, some, to be sure, are preaching Christ, even from envy and strife, but some also from goodwill. The latter do it out of love, knowing that I'm appointed for the defense of the gospel, but the former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition rather than from pure motives, thinking to cause me distress in my imprisonment. What then? Only then, in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in this I rejoice. And he says it again, yes, and I will rejoice. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's people out there with stinky motives and they're trying to hurt him, but all he's worried about is the fact that Christ is being proclaimed.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled with, the first time I really looked at this, I thought it didn't make sense to me. I was like, so they're not doing it, they're not preaching Christ correctly. But yet he basically says they are. It's just their motivation is wrong. But I don't care if they're trying to hurt me as long as Christ, as long as the Lord gets the glory. And I just think that's something that we struggle with as humans, that um, we think to ourselves, oh, well, he'll get his just desserts, which I don't understand exactly what that means, but I think we know what the implication is. Karma, I hate that word because there really is no such thing, but what I'm saying is that
Mm-hmm.
you go ahead and do that. It's going to come around and bite you again. And we take pleasure in that. We want that to happen. And yet Paul is saying, uh, as long as the Lord is proclaimed, I will rejoice in that. So that's convicting to me because I don't think I could
Yeah.
feel that way.
Yeah. And it really helps me too when I think about different works that are done or started or whatever. And I think, I wouldn't have done it that way.
Mhm.
Oh, if I was the one in control or organizing or if we assign motives, they just want attention or they just want,
Mhm.
all that horrible stuff that we can do sometimes. Yeah, that's good that Paul, as long as the gospel is being preached,
Mhm.
and taking himself out of the way altogether, he still glories in the fact that, well, the gospel's being preached.
Hmm. Yeah,
Even
that's
if
all
they're
that
not
mattered
doing
to
it
him.
for the right motives, the gospel's still being preached.
Hmm.
And that's what matters.
And when you think about what that book, he talks about having the heart of a servant, and that he did. He had the heart of a servant. He didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't looking for glory. In fact, that he was shying away from it, but
Mm-hmm.
just preach the gospel, and whatever brings God glory is what he wanted. All right,
Yeah.
number 4. One, a passage that makes you love God even more than you did before.
Okay. I chose two again, one from the Old Testament, one from the New Testament. The first one,
Cheater.
Genesis 22, of course. First time the word love is used, Abraham and his son Isaac, God staying his hand and providing the ram,
Yeah.
knowing that in the future he's not going to be able to do that for his own son. So love that passage. And then in the New Testament, Mark 5:25 and following. And that's the one about the woman with the issue of blood. And the reason that makes me love God more is because, she's been suffering for 12 years and she's considered unclean. She's not supposed to be around people, but she, winkles her way through the crowd just to touch the hem of Jesus's garment. And he says, "Who touched my garment?" So it could be taken as so negative that, he draws attention to it. She's just trying to slip in there and just kind of do it real quick and get back out of the way. But he draws attention to it. But it's not to shame her or embarrass her, it's to reassure her. And he tells her, "Your faith has made you well. Go in peace." And so he comforts her, but he also lets everybody, that whole crowd, know she's clean now. And so that made me love God more, because I think Satan is the one that kind of gets into our heart and makes us think that, God is interested in us tripping up and being shamed and called out to give an account. But if something ever is brought to light, maybe we got busted, maybe a secret sin came to light, or whatever. If something ever does come to light, God wants to use that for our good. And he wants it to be an opportunity for us to be right with him, and for there to be cleansing and purification, and you can be well, your faith can save you. And that's what we need to remember, that it's never about shame, or, well, there needs to be shame on our part, but it's never about shaming us or embarrassing us or humiliating us or calling us out or aha.
Yeah.
But it's because of his great love and because of what he can do for us in that situation. And in this
really
case,
resist it.
Yeah, this wasn't a sinful situation. This was a physical disease, but it made her unclean. And but I just think that character of God is seen in how Jesus handled her. And he could have said, "Why are you touching me? You're not supposed to be touching me. You're unclean," and embarrassed her in front of everybody. But he didn't do that.
Yeah, I love that whole story. Sometimes I wonder how the father who was waiting for Jesus to follow him, how he felt about that delay as Jesus stopped to talk to that woman. But I love what you brought up about the brokenness and how God uses that, because if we're not broken, we haven't learned, from our own sin. But if we don't allow that shame, the intent of that is to draw us back to him and make us realize what we did wrong and not want to do it again. Someone told me recently, and I know it's a well-known quote, but I had never heard it before. She said, it's something along the lines of, God uses the broken. That's how the light gets in. Of course, we all have something in us that's broken, and that's how the light gets in. And we need the light to get in. So that's a beautiful section.
Yeah.
One that made me love God even more. This was a tough one. There's several. There's Exodus 34, where God describes himself. It's the Lord who is full of mercy and compassion and graciousness. And, that where he describes himself, to know that that's what he wants you to know about him, are these things. Luke 4, where Jesus is in the synagogue and he's reading, I think he's reading from Isaiah, and that he was sent for recovery of sight to the blind, to set free the oppressed, to preach the gospel to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives. That's what he was sent for. When you really look at that and think about, that's pretty the upside down kingdom that you hear about, that
Mm.
the kingdom is not about the wonderful, great, high and mighty people, but the lowly, the kingdom of the lowly. And that's who he came to save. I love Isaiah 30:18. I cheated too because there's several. Isaiah 30:18, God longs to be gracious and waits on high to have compassion on me. That's a paraphrase, but a God that longs to be gracious and waits to have compassion.
Hmm.
I love Isaiah 66:2
What was that
to
verse again?
um, Isaiah 30:18. But Isaiah 66:2, to this one will I look, to him who is humble and contrite of spirit and who trembles at my word. And that word tremble is, the Haredi Jews that stand at the wall and bob their heads. Sometimes people say that's why they're
Hmm.
called Haredi Jews. But I love that. He looks to the humble and contrite of spirit. But the one that I really landed on was Isaiah.
You really cheated on this
I
one.
did. I guess said passage or section, which is not even in all the same section. But Isaiah 57, 15 through 21 says, for thus says the high and exalted one who lives forever, whose name is holy. I dwell on a high and holy place, and also with the contrite and lowly of spirit, in order to revive the spirit of the lowly and to revive the heart of the contrite. For I will not contend forever, nor will I always be angry. For the spirit would grow faint before me, and the breath of those whom I have made. Because of the iniquity of his unjust gain, I was angry and struck him. I hid my face and was angry. And he went on turning away in the way of his heart. I have seen his ways, but I will heal him. I will lead him and restore comfort to him and his mourners. When you look at the context of that whole chapter, he's talking about all of the terrible things that they did. They were uh, so idolatrous. They were adulterous. They were rebellious. They were deceitful. They were so far removed from God. And yet, this is what he says about them. That whole book is God trying to draw his people back to him. And you look at the Old Testament pattern of falling away and God drawing them back and falling away, and you kind of roll your eyes at them if you're like me, like, people, can you hear yourselves? How dumb you're being. Why don't you stick with God? And then I think, hello, Carla. Why don't you stick with God? There's times in your own life that you just realize how roller coaster you are sometimes with your relationship with God and with faithfulness, although using that word loosely, because we all are going to sin. We're all going to fall short. We're all going to make mistakes, but we stay walking in the light. So sometimes that roller coaster is still in the light. It's just a struggle. So the book of Isaiah, and I haven't done nearly as much study as I need to do. John loves that book and talks about it all the time as a 66 chapter book of God calling his children home. And it really is. So I would like to spend more time in there.
Well, I've been hearing the exact same thing from Neil because that's the book that he's been in he does he puts out like a daily scripture study. And right now he's been going through the book of Isaiah. And he just keeps coming away from it saying, man, or wow, or obviously haven't spent enough time in Isaiah. He just keeps over and over, keeps coming up with that same impression and saying
Yeah.
the same things that you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Okay, the last one is, what is a passage that helps you keep going when you're discouraged?
I chose Hebrews 12. Again, so many of them, but I chose Hebrews 12, the first few verses of that one, because I started thinking about times when I have been discouraged, and it either comes down to my own problem or things that are happening. And, so I feel like Hebrews 12 covers both of those areas. And, because we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, referring back to the chapter before with all those characters who lived out their faith, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily entangles us or besets us, whichever version you have there. So I feel like that's both of them. The burdens that we might have that we're feeling weighing us down, there's always something, right? Or the sin, the weaknesses that we're struggling with, just let us lay it aside and keep our eyes on Jesus and run the race with endurance, and to me it's just a reminder of there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing's going to catch God by surprise.
Mhm.
People, we have all these examples of people who lived faithfully, even though they didn't see the promises fulfilled in their lifetime at times,
Yeah.
and we can look back and see it all unfolding in the complete word, but they didn't, but they were still faithful. And so it encourages me when I'm discouraged to keep looking up, keep my eyes on Jesus, and those things that I'm trying to carry, if they're burdens, give them to God. Try the best that I can to lay them, pray about them, lay them aside. If there's something I can do, do it, but then lay it aside. If there's a sin that's got me discouraged, recognize that it's entangling me. It is not doing me any favors.
Mhm.
Lay it aside and keep looking to Jesus. So that's the passage that keeps me going.
That's really funny because that's mine too.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. I'll even let you look at it. But mine's a little bit different approach because I mean it's the same intent, but I was doing a lesson recently on measuring the fruit of the spirit in my life. And I was thinking about how when I was preparing, I was like, running this race between the flesh and the spirit is what I feel like I'm doing sometimes. And how, I had kind of giggled in my mind because I'm thinking about my flesh and my spirit running this race. And it's like I'm beating myself up and tripping myself up because I'm struggling with myself. I'm struggling with doing the right thing when I want to do the wrong thing, when I want to do the right thing and I do the wrong thing, just constantly on this race, fighting myself. But when I was reading through that hall of fame of faith in Hebrews 11, and then it comes to Hebrews 12:1, and it's talking about that great a cloud of witnesses that surrounding us. And I used to think of that as, in my mind, I pictured it as you're running in this arena and you're surrounded by all these people in the past in the Bible. They're sitting in the stands and they're cheering you on and saying, you can do it. But then as I was preparing for this lesson, I was thinking, this doesn't really make sense because this race is just straight on. It's not running around and around and around, running straight on. And when you think about being surrounded by people, I I thought about those people are not up in the stands. They are on the track with me, running the race with me. And I get chills and I get a lump in my throat thinking about it because when you think about Abraham and Moses and David and Samson and Rahab and all those people that are mentioned in that chapter above. So you're running the race and you fall. You just fall flat on your face and you've got gravel all over your face and you're just laying there and you've given up and you're just like, I can't do this. I can't do this. So maybe there's some kind of sexual sin in your past. And there's David, and he just lays down on the track next to you. And you're eye to eye with David. And he says, you know what? I've been there. I've done that. But God forgave me and he will forgive you. Let's get up. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to help you up and let's run this race together. And so you're running along with David and he's like, okay, I've got you. Maybe you're not holding hands because that'd make me trip. But there's David on the track with you. And then you think about Rahab and you've lived a sinful life for whatever you've had in your past. Maybe you've not been a prostitute like Rahab, but there's sin in your past and it trips you up and you fall again. And there you go. And you've scratched up your knee and your clothes are torn and you've got the gravel on your face and you just lay there. But Rahab gets down there next to you on the track and she says, me too. I've been there. Let's get up. I'm going to help you up. I'm going to brush that gravel off your knees and I'm going to run this race with you. And we're going to do this together. Have you ever been afraid of what God wanted you to do? There's Gideon, fell down with you. I'm going to help you up. We're going to run this race together. Have you ever doubted God? There's Sarah. She's fallen down with you and she's going to help you get up and run the race with you. And when you look at what they all did, they by faith conquered kingdoms. They performed acts of righteousness. They obtained the promises. They shut the mouths of the lions. They quenched the fire, escaped the sword. All of those things that they were able to do through God's power. And here we are, and they're running next to us. They're not up in the stands cheering us on. They are right next to us in this figurative sense, cheering us on. They're going to help us They have been there, done that, and they know you're able to do it too because they did it with God's help. And it just blew me away when I changed just thinking, something simple of they're up in the stands because I think weird like that, picture things. But to think about just being, because sometimes you just feel like you're flat on your face. I did it. I'm so stupid. I did it again. Why did I do that again? I quit. I give up. But yet there's somebody, one of those people of the Bible who had great faith, and they're there surrounding us and helping us run that race. And that is, it, it just has made a world of difference to me to think of it like that, that they're helping me. And they do, because when you think of what they faced and what they did, and not just that they were heroes of faith, but they were fallible and they did stupid things too. And they messed up and they sinned, and yet God still used them. And I love that. I just love that.
Yeah,
So that's mine.
and we look to the infallible one,
Hmm.
and who the author and finisher, which takes the pressure off of ourselves and reminds us, just like all those characters that you just mentioned, individuals, I should say, in chapter 11, we get to look back and see that they weren't perfect.
Hmm.
We get to look back and see the whole story and how everything unfolded and God was with them and their faith was rewarded. And in our own lives, we can't do that, but the author and finisher can. And,
Hmm.
we look to him who sees everything. And just like he was with them, he'll be with us.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I just love that whole Hebrews 11 and 12. It just helps me look forward instead of being tempted to look back.
That's funny that we chose the same
Yeah.
one for the last one.
Yeah. And it's a little bit not random, but it's kind of an
Mm-hmm.
unusual place to go for encouragement, I guess.
Well, and there were so many options too. Again, it's
Hmm.
so much of the word is encouraging and helps
Hmm.
you when you're discouraged. So
Yeah.
how
So
about that?
where were
How
you going
about
to talk
that?
about Peter?
Uh, uh,
Because you didn't
I
bring him back
didn't.
up.
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't. I was going to talk about Paul, so I was wrong in the
Oh,
beginning.
okay. So it wasn't,
Yeah.
I didn't steal any of your thunder.
No, I was going to, it was the Second Corinthians 6 passage on
Okay.
Paul. So,
Okay. All right. Well, I think we've maybe gone a little bit longer than we've been trying to go. Sorry about that.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
you have anything else you want to add to any of that? Do you
mm-hmm.
have something good for me?
I do. And I'm going to go first because I know what yours is and it's gooder than mine. I just discovered something recently. The whole world probably already knows about it, but in case there's one person out there who doesn't, here's my something good for you. Did you know that when you're looking up a recipe on a website, there is something called dark mode? No, cook mode.
I do not know anything about that.
Okay, so I just noticed this. It's a new option, down when you keep scrolling down, you finally get to their recipe
Hmm.
card with all the instruction. There's a little toggle that says cook mode, and you can hit that toggle and it keeps your screen from going dark. So
Because I always lose it.
one of the things I've always hated about that, a lot of times I just want to print it off because I don't want to have
Hmm.
to worry about
Yeah.
keep touching the screen and going back in there. But you can hit that cook mode thing when you're doing a recipe and it'll keep it up there lit up the whole time and you don't have to worry about your screen going dark. Isn't that cool?
Well, that is very cool. That's maybe it's not cooler than mine. It's a different cool because I forever, if I found a recipe I want to try, it's on my phone or iPad, and like I keep trying to go back over there and touching the screen to keep it on. So that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty revolutionary. I'm like you
Yeah.
though. I print it out because I don't want to lose
Yeah.
it. Okay, my something good for you was one of the lectures, and they were all fabulous, but this one in particular I think would be good for everyone to listen to. And it was Kevin Hahn, and he spoke Sunday morning at the Bear Valley Lectures, and his topic was called Church, Your Preacher Carries Your Burdens. And I was interested in it anyway, because, we've both been married to preachers. We
Mm-hmm.
know that sometimes you take on the burdens of your church members. But I thought, it's something that could have easily been taken and kind of like, sounded a little bit whiny, like,
Mm-hmm.
but I
From
knew
the
Kevin wouldn't do that. Yeah,
victim
like,
perspective.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
doing all this for you and you don't do anything for me. So it's not
Yeah.
that at all. It was so, so good. And you'll have to listen to it. I'll put a link for it next week. But he talked about All the things that a preacher does do for his congregation, if he is a good one, which is another of the things that I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking, this is good for the church to hear, the members to hear, because of all of the things that they probably don't think about, how you're the one who ministers to you thinks about you all the time, on vacation, on days off, when they go home at night, they're worried about you. And it's the way Kevin presented it was just so good, because he was reminding everyone that this is on our mind all the time. It's not like a victim way, but just want you to know that because we love you, we think about you. But it was also good, I thought, for preachers who don't feel
Mm-hmm.
that way, because I thought there were times in our ministry that we were, whether it's burned out or tired of whatever, maybe some drama going on, and we didn't feel the burden of those burdens, because we didn't want to pick them up. And
Mm-hmm.
I, that was convicting to me, because I thought that that's preachers need to hear this, that don't feel the way that Kevin is saying he felt. And it was good for preachers who do feel that way, because that, I feel like it gave them validation for feeling the way that they felt. So I think
Yeah.
it's just good for everybody. It was so good. He's an
And that
excellent
can be
speaker.
found at Bear Valley's YouTube channel.
Well, it's on, I found it for mom, so I know it's up there. I was a little bit worried about sharing something good for you that you can't find for a while until they get all the lectures up, but they do have
Mm-hmm.
this one. It was on Sunday morning, and you said you've seen some of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
on the YouTube channel, so I'll post a link to it next week, and everybody can listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Good
really
one.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. It's been a good discussion. I
Yeah,
always
that was
love
fun.
talking Bible with you. That's one of the things that's fun about our relationship, is that but we talk
Mm-hmm.
about things like undone eggs Benedict and Ozempic and whatever else we talked about. Silly things.
That's what we'll title this one. Undone Eggs Benedict Ozempic and
Yeah.
Bible verses.
But it's really not Ozempic. I think
That's right.
it's just those.
Undone Ozempic.
Yeah.
Ozempic.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been fun. I love you.
Yeah.
And until next time.
Keep looking up. Love you too, friend.